Chapter 1. Negotiating with Angels. It was one of those blindingly hot July days, dripping with humidity, when I pulled into Houston Hospice in my usual hurry. As I walked towards the hospice house, I took a moment to appreciate the serene gardens and breathe in the verdant beauty, as it seemingly emanated a sense of peace and love that was almost palpable. My pace suddenly slowed as I was now surrounded by gentleness, kindness, and perfect love. I had always sensed this love and peace radiate from the hospice facility, but never to this degree. I was about to meet wisdom and knowledge in the form of a blind 9-year-old boy with terminal cancer. Matthew was not assigned to me. His usual doctor was unavailable to attend to him, so she asked if I could handle his admission to the inpatient care facility, the last stop for most terminally ill patients. I was happy to do it. I had heard that this was a very special 9-year-old boy, who had requested a transfer from home hospice to the inpatient unit so as not to cause further hardship on his family. I was curious to see what kind of child would do that. Walking toward his room, I skimmed through the hundreds of medical and surgical reports as well as the invasive and aggressive treatments Matthew had received over the last 2 years. I was in awe of how anyone, let alone this young, vibrant boy, could still be alive. I took a deep breath as I entered his room and immediately felt a wave of compassion as I took stock of the ravages of his illness. Immediately I sensed there was something else present that drew my attention more strongly, something not visible, but palpable. A feeling? Energy? Wisdom? Courage? It was something familiar, but I didn't quite recognize it. I stopped for a moment, trying to identify the feeling, but Matthew heard or felt me enter the room, so I shook it off and introduced myself to put the family at ease. I am Dr. Lerma. Welcome. You must be Matthew, I said, intentionally directing my salutation to Matthew's sister, who was sitting directly opposite from Matthew. When she started to laugh, Matthew protested loudly, "No, silly, I'm Matthew." Amazingly, he knew I had addressed her instead of him, considering he had been blind for more than a year. He smiled a magical crooked smile and began an animated attempt to make me laugh. "Dr. Lerma, I want to introduce you to Regina, my tumor. The doctors call her retinoblastoma and tell me she is a bad tumor, but I consider her my friend. You see, Dr. Lerma, Regina is going to help my family and other children who are sick." "How is that possible?" I asked. "Well, God's the only one that knows that, but all I have to do is accept her." I told Matthew that I was so proud of him for wanting to help his family as well as so many people. I felt this was a coping mechanism, albeit one I had never experienced from a 9-year-old boy with an incurable and aggressive cancer to both his eyes. How could this fragile young boy, who was diagnosed only 3 years earlier, followed by the surgical removal of his eyes, with concomitant multiple rounds of chemotherapy and radiation, be so selfless and still without apparent worry? Was his spirituality the reason for his miraculous survival? "So," Matthew said, sounding reminiscent of Dr. Freud, "you're not one of those serious doctors, are you?" I assured him that I was not, and the child blurted out excitedly, "I knew it. You're the one I've been waiting for. The one they told me about." At that moment, I caught a movement in my peripheral vision and whirled around, thinking someone had entered the room, but oddly, no one was there. So I shook it off and asked Matthew what he meant by his last statement. He said a little cryptically and more quietly, "I'll tell you later. It's not time yet. It's a secret." A tremendous amount of energy and joy radiated from this charismatic boy, and, as a doctor, I questioned whether he qualified for inpatient hospice care. It was apparent that Matthew was not as close to death as most patients who arrived at the inpatient facility, so I asked his mother why she felt he needed aggressive symptom management. With tears in her eyes and a shaky voice, she said, "He asked to be brought here because he didn't want to die at home." Dr. Lerma, I told him that God was going to heal him and was not ready for him, but no amount of persuading could change his mind. Matthew said his time was really close and that he did not want to burden his sisters and me with the difficult job of caring for him as he died. He is such a wonderful boy, always thinking of us, and watching out for us. Matthew said he would be the kind of man that would always protect us. I don't know how he does it. I wouldn't have the strength to stay alive like he does. Dr. Lerma, you know I don't really believe in God, but I am starting to think that he was sent to my daughters and me from something greater than us all. Possibly God? Will you pray with me, Dr. Lerma? She was now crying inconsolably. Brushing a tear from my own eye, I put my arm around her and, softly but with fervor, prayed the only prayer I knew, the Lord's Prayer. In a piecemeal fashion, she recited the prayer along with me, and at its end, she looked at me square in the eyes and said, "Don't you feel it, Dr. Lerma? You know a presence of something wonderful and loving." "Without a doubt," I replied. "Without a doubt." I was truly inspired by what Matthew's mother had sensed. Matthew's courage and strength, and ability to find joy during adversity, were astounding. I remember the physicians and nurses at the cancer hospital talking about how he radiated love and joy. They said that, despite his painful therapies, his constant smile, his beautiful, wise words, and his spontaneous heartfelt hugs always managed to make everyone feel loved. Medically, this fragile child, with a softball-sized tumor protruding from his right scalp, should have died months ago, slipped into unconsciousness, or have been in the throes of excruciating pain. Yet, he defied all the odds. Instead of an intolerant, resentful child, here was a joyful 9-year-old boy who had no problem holding clear conversation and an uncanny knack of making people feel happy. After a few visits, I noticed that was not the only one captivated by Matthew's pure joy and infectious laugh. Everyone who had the pleasure of meeting him called him mature, delightfully funny, loving, compassionate, and wise beyond his years. Word of his alluring and charming personality drew families from surrounding rooms, often leaving them feeling profoundly moved. Incredibly, this sanguine, youthful spirit willfully accepted the life God had given him. As Matthew put it so eloquently, "My illness will bring my mom to Jesus Christ, and that is worth it." After Matthew's regular doctor returned, I felt the need to continue my visits. It was as if I was magically pulled into the room every time I passed the door. One day I asked Matthew how he had lived so long with all that he had endured. He seemed to be deciding if it was time to share this information. He cocked his head as if listening to someone talk, and then he said simply and matter-of-factly, "Okay, I'll tell him." "Well, Doc, it was a gift from God's angels." I was a little surprised by this revelation, but sometimes patients did mention angels, and I usually just ignored it as a side effect of the medications or the hallucinations of the dying mind. But this felt different somehow, as Matthew was very lucid and had refused all medications since his admission. Not wanting to jeopardize the relationship I had developed with Matthew by openly doubting his comments, I eagerly pursued the conversation by asking him what he meant by "it's a gift from God." He replied, "It's okay to tell you my secrets now. The angels just gave me permission to talk to you. I have lived this long because I asked my angels for extra time to allow my mother and sisters to accept my illness and death, and especially to accept God. Why do you think your family needs all this help?" I asked Matthew. "Dr. Lerma, my mother became very angry with God after my dad left us. She had no job, and my father did not help with money. She was angry with God. Then when they found my cancer, she lost her belief in God. She wondered why God was taking everyone she loved and at a bad time in her life. She stopped going to church, and my sisters followed my mom. I am going to help my mother and sisters. God has allowed me to stay until they are healed. Don't you want to be healed, Matthew?" In the beginning, yes, but now I know that, if I'm healed, my mom will not find God, and that is not good. I want to always have my mommy. So I am going to die to help my mommy find God. This way, I will have her forever. Do you understand, Dr. Lerma?" "Oh Matthew, of course I do. I don't know what to say. I with you could be healed and your mom find God too. Why can't the angels and God make that happen?" Matthew replied, "Dr. Lerma, if you could see the other side, you wouldn't be asking me that question. You will see. It is all going to be perfect." I was completely mesmerized by Matthew's astonishing revelations. How could his comments be construed as delirious? The clarity and clear understanding of his reasoning were beyond belief. I was now deeply captivated with Matthew's logic, and thus continued my conversations and delved further into researching the hallucinations of the dying. Matthew continued, "The angels assured me that my family will find peace through Christ as a result of my faith and unconditional love for them." I could not believe the wisdom that was being imparted by this 9-year-old. Matthew said he had always believed in God's angels and had been conversing with them every Friday since he began chemotherapy. By this time, he knew that his illness had a purpose to help his family and the world. I asked him how it would help the world, and he said, "Oh, you'll see how it works. The angels have plans for you, too, but that's still a secret." I couldn't drag any more information out of him, no matter how often I asked. I never knew a child who could keep a secret so well, but this was no ordinary child. The angels had chosen a worthy messenger. What kind of child has the presence of mind to think so clearly about death, and to be so concerned for others when he is experiencing such trauma? And why did he request admission to our acute care center? What made him think he was about to die? How could he not be in excruciating pain with such a rapidly progressive, intracranial malignancy? These were questions that plagued me, and finally I decided to ask Matthew. That same evening, when I got around to asking Matthew why he had requested admission for inpatient care, he confided, "I know my time is close, and I don't want to die at home. It would make my family too sad." "How do you know this?" I asked. As he glanced toward his mother, Matthew smiled and stated, "My angels told me." This was the first time he had mentioned the angels in his mother's presence, and she looked completely shocked as she said, "You never told me that. Why didn't you tell me you were seeing angels?" Again, as though it was as natural as rain, Matthew replied, "I wasn't supposed to tell you until now, but now it's okay to talk about them." I pretended to whine as though I were a curious child, so what can you tell me about the angels? Matthew grinned mischievously, and said, now that you ask, I can tell you a lot, but Dr. Lerma, first read me a short story, then I'll tell you more. He handed me a small children's book and told me to open it to page 24. As I searched for the page, I saw the simplicity of the stories and suddenly felt silly reading it to Matthew, as it was difficult to view him as a child. Yet, I felt it prudent to oblige him, and I cheerfully read the story aloud. It was obvious by now that Matthew had a knack for getting what he wanted, people just seemed to want to comply. The 5-minute story he requested was about a little girl who kept a wonderful secret given to her by a fairy. The fairy told her that she could reveal the secret at a special time, and only at that special time. The importance of the story was veiled, but clearly evident. Matthew's mother and I both knew that his special time meant that death approached surely and steadily. After the story, Matthew said the angels asked him to reveal the angelic messages, and that it was important to do it now. Matthew said, I'll answer as many questions about the angels as they will allow. As a scientist, I set aside my clinical mind and opened my heart to this frail little angel messenger. My curiosity was piqued, and I eagerly began asking Matthew questions about life and God. He was clearly excited to be sharing his knowledge with regards to his disease and angelic experiences. Matthew told me, finally, I get to talk about all the cool stuff. Boy, it was hard not to tell anyone what I was seeing. Why don't we talk tomorrow? I am sort of sleepy right now. Absolutely, I replied. Anytime you want to talk with me, just have the nurses page me. I don't care what time it is. I am here for you, Matthew. Remember, I love you. He smiled, gave me a warm hug and a kiss on my cheek and said, sleep with the angels, Dr. Lerma. I love you, too. Matthew had me paged the following morning. He wanted me to talk and play with him. Surprisingly, I had an unusually low number of admissions that day, so he was able to spend all morning with him. Oddly, the next day was even slower, and in fact the entire week had been among the slowest in years. Was this just coincidence? Whatever it was, the extra time could not have come at a better time. As I entered his room, Matthew, without any pain or distress, asked me if I wanted to assemble Lego structures. Boy, that sounds cool. I always wanted a Lego set when I was young, I told him. Well, here's one. Let's go at it, Matthew commented. While playing, Matthew looked at me, as though he could see me, and said, okay, let's talk about the angels. Ask me some questions. I can feel your heart, and it has questions, so shoot. I started the conversation. Are there any angels with us today, Matthew? Oh yes, they are here. I looked around, but couldn't see anything, so I just kept talking. How many angels do you see? 3. What color are they? They are bright gold. How tall are they? They are a little taller than my favorite basketball player, David Robinson. Do they come to you when you are sleeping or when you are awake? Both ways. They come in my dreams, and we all go swimming with the dolphins, seals, and penguins. It's a lot of fun. When I'm awake, they teach me things about the earth and people. Can you tell me what they teach you about the earth and people? Yes. They tell me that the earth is sick like I am, and that the people have to learn to make it feel better so that everybody can be healthy and happy. Sometimes when I'm swimming with the dolphins and playing with Gabby, I can hear the earth crying because it is sick and is sad. It makes all of us sad. But Gabby has shown me what makes the earth laugh. And what makes the earth laugh, Matthew? You make it laugh by swimming with the dolphins, seals, penguins, fish, and a bunch of other animals, and saying thank you to God for the water, plants, and all that stuff. Do you get it, Dr. Lerma? Boy, do I get it. Thank you, Matthew, for teaching me what have forgotten with regard to respecting our planet and the animals God created for enjoyment and survival. By the way, Matthew, do your angels have names? Yes. The biggest one is Gabby, then Noah, and Rafi. They love us so much, Dr. Lerma. I thought those were very strange names for angels, but then again, could those be nicknames for Gabriel, Noel, and Raphael? Was it possible that two of Matthew's angels were the archangels the Bible spoke of? At that moment, a beautiful, young lady entered the room, and Matthew, looking elated, shouted out, "Hi, Mrs. Smith." She and I looked at each other in total amazement, and silently wondered about his extrasensory perception. I immediately thought about what an opportune time it was to find out more about Matthew's social, emotional, and spiritual persona. Once again, without any prompting from my behalf, Matthew asked his teacher to recount a story that happened a few months earlier. It was this brief story that gave me a precise picture of who Matthew had always been. Mrs. Smith recounted, Matthew begged to go to school for show and tell day, and, although he was not in great shape to do it, the school wanted to help make him feel good in any way they could. All the kids showed up with that special something that would distinguish them from each other. Bubbly Susan brought her goldfish, little Jeff his fire truck, and Xavier even brought his loving mommy. In the end, it appeared that toys, animals, and even parents were the exhibits of choice. That was the case until Matthew was wheeled to the front of the classroom. Matthew said he wanted to show his tumor and talk about the golden ones. I was a little disconcerted because of Matthew's illness and was very protective of him, but he insisted that it was something he had to do. He said that he wanted to help the kids understand that, just because somebody looks different or is sick, that they shouldn't be afraid or shut them out. He said they're just kids. I couldn't say no to him. To my surprise, he quickly had the kids laughing and asking questions about being sick, and if the tumor hurt, and what it was like to be in the hospital. He mesmerized the whole room with his straightforward answers, punctuated by laughter and silly stories about the people at the hospital. Then he told them that when he feels really bad that he goes to dreamland to a beautiful ocean and swims with the dolphins, holding on to their fins and riding on their backs while they jump out of the water. He told them if they ever get sick not to be afraid because God would send special angels to help them. He continued and said that angels are always with you and wanting to help, all you have to do is believe and ask. It was a defining moment for everyone in the room. Ever since then, I have to visit whenever I can. The amount of love and peace I get during my visits is awe-inspiring. The teacher wiped her eyes as she reminisced, and I realized even more strongly that this was no ordinary boy. His love and concern for others allowed him to be of such great service to so many people. Before Mrs. Smith left, I asked her, as well as Matthew's mother, if they knew any children or people in Matthew's life with the names of his angels, Gabby, Noah and Rafi, as I still held a place of skepticism. Neither of them could remember any of his friends, schoolmates, pediatric patients, nurses, or doctors with those names. They were as perplexed as I was. Matthew was not exhibiting classic delirium or cognitive impairment as a side effect of either his cancer or medications. Were these visions and figures purely a coping mechanism? If so, how could this young boy, without eyes, accurately distinguish people's names and the color of their clothes? Did he have some sort of extrasensory perception, or was he truly obtaining information from unseen entities? I was having a difficult time reconciling what I was seeing with what I knew as a scientist. Either way, I was committed to continue helping Matthew find peace and comfort. A day or two later, our conversation continued. "How often do you see the angels, Matthew?" He replied, "Every few days. Mostly on Fridays, I think." "Why do you think they come on Fridays?" "Because that's when I had my chemotherapy, and they want to help me feel better." "Do they talk to you?" "Sometimes." "What do they say?" "They ask me if I'm feeling okay." "What do you tell them?" "I tell them the truth that sometimes I feel sick. They tell me they'll make me feel better whenever I feel bad. That's why I don't have any pain like you always think I should have." "How do they make you feel better?" "They show me blue water with dolphins and let me ride on them, and after that I feel better than before." Matthew was confirming what he had told his classmates at Show and Tell, and now he was attributing it to the angels. It sounded wonderful, and I acknowledged that I would love to do that, too. He told me I could if I really wanted to. All I had to do is just believe and ask. I told him I really wanted to believe the way he did. He smiled and we continued. "How does it feel to ride the dolphins?" "I am so happy and laughing, and the dolphins talk to me, and the water and the sunshine all talk to each other. The angels tell me this is because they all have the one Spirit of God." "Wow! I'd like to hear them all talking to each other." "Oh, you can if you really want to, and you will." "What else happens when you're there?" "All my friends are there, too." "Which friends?" "The little kids that were sick with me at the hospital." "Have they already died?" "Most have, but some are just visiting during their treatment." "What do the kids tell you?" They're so proud of me and they'll come back for me really soon." "How soon?" "Really soon." "Are there children in the room with us?" "No, they only come on Friday." "Do you ever wish you could get better?" "Yes, sometimes." "Can't the angels make you well?" "They could, but they showed me the things that made me choose to be sick. They said they'd make me well if I wanted, but I'm trying to help my family, and that's more important. When people volunteer to suffer for others, it changes the lives of the people you suffer for. Even from my bed I'm able to help so many people." "I know. I can see that you helping me right now." Matthew felt how moved I was by this. He put his hand on my arm and said, "Don't be sad. If you could see what I see and you will one day you'd be really happy for me." There it was again, that cryptic language. I cleared my throat, pulled myself together, took a deep breath, and continued, "What things should I tell my patients who are dying?" Matthew replied, "Tell them to say I'm sorry for hurting others and also to say I'm sorry to God. God wants us to believe in His Son who died for our sins. He wants us to be good and when we do wrong to try to do better and to always remember He loves us so much and wants us to love ourselves like He loves us. If we love ourselves, then we can love others and the world can be happy." The angels told me that this is not far away. That was powerful advice. I thought about how I could use it in my own life, and what a difference it would make if I just did that one little thing. All I could think of was the simplicity of his message, and how often we fail at giving others and ourselves a break. Yes, this little boy was teaching me things I never learned in medical school. On Friday, at around 4 in the afternoon, I stopped in to see if Matthew had any new messages from the angels. Elle was fascinated by our conversations, and, even though I had a busy schedule, I still felt compelled to make time to talk to this little sage in a broken body. Matthew smiled when I entered the room. I could not help but be captivated with the fact that this sightless young boy always knew who I was, as well as most people who entered his room. I gave him a hug, and we continued our angel dialogue. Do you mind if I ask you more questions about the angels, Matthew? No, do you know today is Friday? Yep. The angels were here in the morning. They woke me from my sleep. What did they say? They asked me how I was feeling. What did you tell them? I said I'm feeling sleepy and very happy. Why are you so happy? Because I was swimming with Jesus, the angels, the dolphins, and my friends. Jesus came and played with all of us today and told those of us who were sick that we were no longer going to hurt or be sad. He was going to have his angels pick us up from our hospital beds and take us to play with the dolphins, my friends, and anything we desired forever. Is this the first time that Jesus has played with you and your friends? You're so silly. Of course not. Don't you see that he was the dolphins, the water, the sky, and everything else? He is what was making me laugh and giving me the choice to help myself, my family, and others. Feeling completely emotionally disarmed, I continued the heartfelt conversation. So Matthew, what else did Jesus and the angels say? Well, Jesus said that my time here with my mom and sisters is going to end, and that my wish is going to come true. Rafi then said that my mom and sisters will be happy for where I'm going, and that Jesus, our God, and all of us angels are going to take care of them forever. So, do you really think your cancer was to help your family and other people? Yes. It feels so right. So, will I know the angels' secrets someday? Yes, they said they'd come to you when you're like me. Will I be sick with cancer? No, just sick, and they said I could come back to be with you, too. At that moment, tears rolled down my face, and I hugged this special child of God, because I finally knew that the things he was saying were true. I told him, "Thank you for being such an honest, kind, wonderful patient and friend." Matthew did not know that I was dealing with my own health challenges, but apparently the angels did. This convinced me that the information Matthew was providing was true. Matthew hugged me back and whispered in my ear, "The angels are going to pick me up on Monday. Will I get to see you before then?" Of course, I assured him. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Matthew. I want to put this in a book and let people know about your story. Do you mind? No, the angels told me to talk to you so you could do that. What else do they want you to tell me? To tell people that angels are real and they really care about us and want to help us. They want us not to be scared and to pray to God always for help like I did. What do you want to tell the world? Not to be scared of dying when you believe in God. It's actually pretty fun, with lots of people, dolphins, and angels that make you laugh. I told the dolphins it must be fun to be dolphins, and they said it must be fun to be a young kid, too. Isn't that funny? We all want to be something else. I made my visit to Matthew early Monday around 7 in the morning, because that is when Matthew said the angels would visit. When I entered, I heard Matthew laughing with his sisters while playing the karaoke machine. Matthew knew the moment I arrived and said, "Hello again," as if he could see. As they were singing, I joined in for a moment and then said, in my best DJ voice, "Good morning, everyone. How is Matthew feeling today?" "Great. I slept great, and I don't even have any pain." I started to ask if the angels were in the room, but before I could get the words out, Matthew boldly spoke up. "Dr. Lerma, do you know there are about 20 angels in the room with us right now?" "Really, anyone else?" I asked. "Yep, all my friends from the beach. It's like a big party with hats and balloons and everything. They're all laughing, and the angels are so bright and gold that the light makes everyone in the room look gold, too. All this light makes me feel like when I was in the first grade when I could run and play all day in the sunshine." Matthew's words filled his mother and sisters with an incredible joy and sadness. His mother prayed aloud into the karaoke machine, saying, "God, I'm ready to give him back to you now. I don't want him to suffer anymore. I love you, Jesus. I want to thank you for letting us feel the love from my son for as long as we did. But please, don't make him suffer for us anymore." After her prayer, Matthew, with a look of exhilaration, turned towards me and said, "It's done." "What's done?" I asked. "My wish is granted. My family opened their hearts to Jesus." Matthew then gifted me with his final words, "I'll see you later." The little boy nodded his head as if he was sharing a special secret that only I would understand. I knew he meant that he would be by my side upon my death. It was about 4 in the afternoon when Matthew went to sleep and slipped into a coma. Matthew passed away peacefully at 6 in the evening with his family at his bedside. I was sure his friends and angels took him home. Matthew's mother and sisters sat there for a long time just looking at his peaceful face with the crooked smile still on it. I could feel his spirit still around, no longer in the worn-out body. I could see that Matthew's mother was finally at peace with her son leaving. I knew that this world was a better place for Matthew having been here, even if only for a few years. Everything had happened exactly as he said it would. As I left the room for the last time, I could swear I heard the sound of dolphin laughter and children giggling in the distance while water splashed in the background. But of course, as a doctor one wouldn't say that's true. I can only honor the memory of what a little boy said about the angels on his way out. Interestingly, in my dreams I now swim with the dolphins regularly, and occasionally see Matthew there, more radiant than ever. Doctor's notes and more dialogue with Matthew. After Matthew was gone, I kept thinking about our conversations. As a doctor, especially a hospice doctor, it was challenging for me to believe and understand the concept that suffering serves a real purpose in the world. I've heard from patients over and over again that their willful suffering is part of their learning experience, that it serves other people as well as themselves. I am still grappling with that concept, but now try to use the time at the end of a patient's life to learn about their spiritual insights so I can share it with others as the wisdom of dying. Here is some more information Matthew provided in response to my questions for the angels. I hope you will consider them in the spirit with which they are shared. What is heaven? Well, I know it feels like it's your birthday all the time, and the gifts are so much better. All you have to do is take Jesus' hand and he will take you home. Does everybody see that? Yes, but only when they believe in love. You know that love is God. Is heaven like earth? Yes, but it's perfect. It's like earth, but we finally get to live our lives without worry and have everything we want. When you finally get really done with all toys and things, you understand it's nothing, and you move on. The angels say we move toward thought at that time. I'm not sure what that means. Why would heaven be like earth? Why not? It is really a wonderful creation of God that He wants us to really love. There is so much more, Dr. Lerma. For me, I like to swim with the dolphins because they talk to me and I talk to them. I tell them how wonderful it is to be a dolphin, and they tell me how wonderful it is to be a kid. And all the trees talk, and the water. Everything seems to talk to you and make you feel so happy. Why do you have 3 golden angels? You start out with 1, and you get more when you're really sick. During the last 3 to 4 days, you might have 30 to 40 angels, as many as you need to feel good about leaving your family and going with God. Do they all look like these golden angels? No, there are different kinds. Some are brighter and bigger, some are smaller. Why? They have more power and they can do different things. Laughing, he said, it's like our president, the senators, and then my mommy. What happens when we die? When we leave this body and go with Jesus, we do that one great thing we always wanted to do, but we're not able to do. We are learning things here on earth about love, and it continues in heaven with God. You just sort of move on to the next grade, and you step forward where you left off. God has so much planned for His children. I hear it's better than anything on earth. We can't do things here on earth because most of us don't believe we can do it. We just need to know that. That's just the basics. You could do the same things on earth if you believed enough. The angels told me it's like the Peter Pan story. It's very simple, Dr. Lerma. What about evil? Is there such a thing? There are bad things in the world, but we are all responsible, and we can change it, and that is the goal of God and our goal too, to make the changes. Jesus told me to just believe in Him and to believe in ourselves, and that one day soon all dark things will turn to a happy light. I saw part of God's plan and it's wonderful. Dr. Lerma, just know that all the horrible things that are happening to all of us are because of the body and our mind. It is up to all of us, especially those with healthy lives, to use our minds and hearts to teach about Jesus' love for us and to depend on God to help us find cures for the world's diseases of the mind and body. It will become easier as more and more healthy people are being born with the answers to our problems and with a love for God. Those people who hurt and kill people are very sick and need not be judged but helped, especially through prayer. God wants us to depend on Him and work together to reach His plan. Please tell everyone you meet, Dr. Lerma, of the good news that Jesus died for every bad thing we have done and will ever do, and that He has the answer to the world's problems. By believing in Him, we will find health, peace, and love. We should always pray for peace and love and then try to do things, including work, which makes you truly happy. This will make you happy, peaceful, and loving, and everyone around you. Through this peace and love, sadness, sickness, hunger, wars, and much more will be gone one day. So, it's all in prayer and in believing in Jesus Christ. Yes, just believe in Jesus. Then listen to Him. He and the angels are always talking to us and trying to keep us happy and safe. Listen to that feeling in your heart first. Not your mind first. The mind without the heart leading it is dangerous. Learn to listen to God. He really wants to help, but not control us.